and mobility. Sorry about that. My name is Megan Friedel, and I am the Orientation and Mobility Specialist Association Board Secretary. And I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things before we get started. So if you are a OMSA member, you are able to receive 1.5 CEs for attending this live event. We will send out an email probably early next week with a link to an evaluation, and you will need the opening and closing code to receive credit for this. Once you fill that out, about 30 days after, you should have your certificate from us. Sometimes they come in a little bit sooner, but we leave that window open for 30 days for you to complete the short evaluation. And our opening code, we have two words, is Indie Thunder. And I am now going to hand it over to Desmond.
All right, hello everybody. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Ron Brown tonight. Ron is an accomplished orientation mobility professional. He holds National Orientation and Mobility Certification. He is a 1999 graduate of Louisiana Tech University with a master's degree in educational psychology with a concentration in orientation and mobility. For over 24 years, he has owned and operated two businesses, including RB Vending and Kane and Able, which provides O&M training and other critical services to blind individuals. A passionate advocate for the blind community, Ron has been an active member of the National Federation of the Blind, NFB, for more than 40 years. He has served in leadership roles within the organization, including as the immediate past vice president of the NFB and immediate past president of the NFB of Indiana. Outside of his professional and advocacy work, Ron enjoys a fulfilling personal life. He has been married to his wonderful wife, Jean, for 37 years, and together they are the proud parents of two daughters and six grandchildren. Family plays a central role in his life, and he cherishes the time spent with loved ones. I present to you Mr. Ron Brown.
Well, thank you, Desmond, and thank you, Megan, and all of the ONSA board for allowing me to talk about my life, my work in general, and I'm a pretty easygoing fellow. So if you guys have questions that you want to jump in on, feel free to do so. I'm just going to briefly tell you guys how I got involved in the orientation mobility field and why I chose contracting as my profession in this field. So in 1997, I was sitting at my desk in my other business. It's a business enterprise business, and I owned a snack shop and a bank of vending machines in the Indianapolis area, one of the largest locations we've had in this area. And so I was reading through the Braille Monitor, and it's our national magazine for the National Federation of the Blind. As I was reading through it, I came across an article by this doctor. Her name was Dr. Ruby Riles. And Ruby was writing to the masses about this new pioneer project. And this new pioneer project was, she was looking for blind people in particular and others to come into the field of orientation and mobility. In order to get the master's at Louisiana Tech at that time, you had to have a bachelor's degree already. And so they would give us a full ride to get this master's. A new project. It was created by the National Federation of the Blind, Louisiana Center for the Blind, and Louisiana Tech University. So I kept reading the article and I was thinking about it, and I said, I got pretty good O&M skills. And so I think I might call her and see what would come of it. And so, well, I have to go back and tell you guys that I'm totally blind. I can't see a thing. I lost my sight when I was a senior in high school. I was 18 years old coming home from a basketball game, and I got shot in the face and blinded. I went from 20/20 to nothing. And so I thought, oh my God, my life is over as I know it. But that was when I was 17 years old. How fortunate for me, at 18, I found the National Federation of the Blind. And I do have to say that because our national president was our state president in Indiana. His name was Dr. Mark Maurer, but at that time he was just Mark, and he was our state president. And so I So I got to talking to him, and he actually changed my life with his message. And he was telling me that, Ron, it's respectable to be blind, that just because you've lost your sight don't mean you can lose your ability to participate in society, and that you can do and be anything you want to be, and blindness should not hold you back. That's what was the message back then. That's what the message is tonight. And so that put me on a path to where I am today. So I was reading the article, and then I called Dr. Riles and I said, I'm interested in this program that you guys are trying to get together. And she said, well, do you have an undergrad degree? And I said, yes. And I graduated from Ball State in the field of health science and counseling. And so she said, oh, good. She said, well, would you like to come down and we can talk about what this program is all about? That was a brand new pioneer project, so it was just getting off the ground, and I was really excited about it. And I flew from Indiana to Louisiana, and I talked to Dr. Rouse about the program. It was a fascinating program because it was the first time that I had known that someone had reached out to the blind community and said, we want you guys to teach pain travel to other blind and visually impaired people. Of course, you all know that at that time, back in 1997, 98, the traditional field wasn't so interested in the blind leading the blind, because we felt like that they felt like we would probably get ourselves in trouble and get someone hurt. This project gave us an opportunity to get a master's degree in education psychology with a national certification in orientation mobility. So I signed up for the program. Make a long story short, I graduated in 1999, and I came back home with a degree. Now, I had already been in business, as I told you guys, but so I really didn't want to give up my business. It was a pretty good business. I made a decent living at it. And I started thinking about it. And I said, well, I don't necessarily have to go to work for a traditional rehabilitation center. And so I think I'll start another business. And so I started looking into contracting and what all contracting would be about. One of the things I found out early is that when you contract with the state of Indiana vocational rehabilitation program, that you first had to have a fee sheet. You first had to have a cover letter saying what you offered to the program, and then you had to sign up to be a vendor with the state. And so I did all of that, and I started to teaching. Well, prior to that, before I started teaching, I was the state president here in Indiana of the National Federation of the Blind. So right before I graduated, my wife, apparently unbeknownst to me, was setting up students for me already. And so she was like, well, if you're gonna work in this field, you got to have some students to work with. And so she had been asking around and to the blind community about anybody needing cane travel lessons. And so a lot of people had said, yeah, and so anyway, they when I came home, I had at least 7 people that wanted to have work in the field of orientation and mobility. And so I started, once I set myself up with the vocational rehabilitation program here in Indiana, and I got accepted as a vendor with the state of Indiana, and they accepted my fee sheet, my cover letter. Then what I did was I sent every vocational rehabilitation counselor in the state of Indiana, I sent them my cover letter and I told them who I was and I introduced myself and I told them about my degree and I told them about my certification. And so pretty much the rest was history. But again, I'm a totally blind instructor. That was a new concept to them in the state of Indiana at that time because they never had one. And so they were a little skeptical. And I remember in particular, one was so skeptical that these are counselors I'm talking about. She was so skeptical that she said, well, okay, we never had a blind instructor here and we don't know how it will work out and liability issues. But I tell you what, I got somebody, if you can work with him, then I'll give you some hours. So I said, okay. So the guy she gave me to start working with was deaf blind. Now here I am totally blind. He's deaf blind. So I'm thinking, okay, here we go. So she said, if you can work with him and successfully make a closure with him, then I'll give you some hours, to work with him and other students. So to make a long story short, I started to work with this young man, and what we did, he had an interpreter. I was blind, and a lot of times when you work with the deafblind, of course, you got to do a lot of hand over hand work with them. You got to literally be in their face. And I know a lot of people say, don't crowd me, don't get in my body space, and all that. Literally, you have to do that in order for the deafblind person to know that you're in the world and talking to them. A lot of hands on. And I was touching him and I was talking to him, and she was signing to him in his hand. And so it would be me, him, and his interpreter all walking down the street together. And I was giving him instruction and I was showing him how to center the cane, grip the cane, um, arc the cane, those kinds of things. And so we walked and walked. And so he literally, she gave me 10 hours to work with him, which wasn't a long time because if I did 2 hours a day, that's just like 5 lessons. So we broke it up into 10 lessons. So I did an hour every time I worked with him, and we ended up doing 10 lessons. Well, to make a long story short, the guy got so good at cane travel, he moved out of his sister's house. He went to work for a company here in Indianapolis. The first month he was working there, he got employee of the month, then he got employee of the year, and then he moved away from his sister's house, and now he's on his own, doing his own thing. And my reward for that was that she gave me the original 10 hours, and then she gave me 50 more hours to work with him. At that time I came out of school, I was charging about $50 an hour. So for that one student, I thought I got paid really well. And so it boosted my confidence because of his confidence and his belief in me, and more importantly, his belief in himself and his belief in blindness. And so that proceeded, and I started to work with him. Then I started getting word of mouth around, because remember now, I'm the president of the federation here. So I'm meeting lots of blind people. And of course, the old antics, you know somebody that knows somebody that knows, another blind person. And that's what literally happened. I would never tell them or solicit them and say, you want me to be your O&M instructor, then go and tell you be our counselor. But what I did tell them is I taught cane travel, and this is how I teach it. I teach from a structured discovery model of rehabilitation and structured discovery model of cane travel, and that is structured discovery learning. And so they were interested in that. And unlike traditional cane travel lessons, I taught from a cognitive paradigm, and other people taught from a uh, visual paradigm. And so it would not take long after that the word spread that we had a new cane travel instructor in town. And I started with the agency here in Indianapolis. And then I really realized that I need to set myself up in business and get, some credentials going for my cane travel business. I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, why don't you name your business Cane and Able? You have a cane, you'll be able. And we laughed about it, but eventually I did. I named my business Cane and Able Orientation Mobility Services. I've been teaching cane travel now 24 years, and I haven't lost a student yet, thank God. So so what I also learned too is that when you're contracting, one of the things you really have to do if you're not known and if you don't have uh, connections, what you have to do is market yourself, market yourself, and market yourself, and not necessarily in that order. Because of the fact that marketing is a key in order to get business in this contracting business that I had set up for myself. So I started reaching out to independent living centers because I knew that they had the Chapter 2 dollars and they had the senior dollars and to work with senior citizens. I started working with the senior citizens and getting those contracts with the independent living centers. And then, of course, I was working with Voc Rehab clients, and Voc Rehab, whatever age you need to be to open a case with VR, I believe it was 16 at the time here in Indiana. And so I worked with those guys, and I worked with those who were trying to go back to work and had recently lost their sight. And I worked with those clients. I also worked with school contracts. Now, before I talk about school contracts, is there any questions or comments about anything so far? Anybody got a burning desire to ask me anything, please feel free to do so.
We don't have anything in the chat yet, but if anybody wants to ask a question in the chat or just let us know. But Ron, as of right
Okay.
now, we don't have anything. I'll let you know if we do.
Excellent. Okay. So school contracts were probably the hardest contracts I had to get because again, as you guys know, I was telling people that I'm a totally blind instructor, and it was hard for the school superintendents to say, well, we're gonna let this blind guy teach our kids cane travel. I mean, isn't there a liability issue? And so I so I kept trying and I didn't get in. But one of the things I noticed is that the parents of blind children were very instrumental in me breaking into school contracts. Again, I'm president of the Federation. I do a lot of advocacy work in the field of blindness, in the field of rehabilitation. And so a parent came to me and said, my child is having a hard time finding an orientation mobility instructor, and we both are. She doesn't, everybody tells us that I'm gonna have to send her to the school for the blind. And everybody was saying that we can't find anyone to come to our school district to teach her. And so the parent invited me to the IEP, and I sat down at the IEP. And so when the teachers and the superintendent and all of those guys started again with we don't have anybody in this district to teach her, and you must send her to the school for the blind up in Indianapolis, and this city was not in India at the time, or this student. And so the mother said, well, I have somebody that'll teach my child, and here he is. And he's sitting next to me. His name is Ron Brown, and he is a certified orientation mobility instructor. Here's his master's degree in ed psych, and here's his certification here. And so I presented all my credentials. And so once I did that, the parents said to the teachers that were sitting around the table, so they decided, okay, we'll give you a chance. And she was in elementary school at the time. And so I started to work with her. And to make a long story short, the lessons went very well. They allowed me to work with her after school when school was out, and I worked with her in her home school district, teaching her how to get from her home to the bus stop so that she can catch the bus to school the very next year and things of that nature. Once I found out that, or actually once the school districts found out that blind instructor was teaching in this school district, then the other school districts reached out to them and they said how successful it was. And so I ended up getting more contracts with other school districts. So, all things work out for the good if you are persistent, if you market yourself well, and if you try to use the proper tools and definitely the right connections. I believe somebody in the chat said, how did I set my fees?
So
How,
Ron, we actually have two questions. Do you mind
okay,
if I read you them in
absolutely.
order?
Sure.
First one was, do you have private paying clients or only through contracts?
I do have private paying clients, and they pay third party through their insurance companies. And so I don't have a lot of those. I've had a few over the years. And the other question was, how did I
How
set
how
my fees?
did how did you decide how much your fees would be, and how did you set up the business side, such as drafting contracts?
Yes. So I went around to the different O&M instructors that were already here in the state of Indiana, and I found out what they were charging at the time. And so I'll never forget that one of my professors told me, don't sell yourself too cheap. You have taken and did so much work in this field that yes, and that you have done so much in this field that you deserve to at least give them a good going rate. You don't want people to think that you're too cheap and that you don't know what you're doing, but you don't want to price yourself out of the market either. So when I looked around, the going rate here for a contractor that didn't have a degree and that was teaching O&M was $35 an hour. I I started charging $50 an hour at the time. And so I set my contract up. I just wrote it up myself, my fee sheet, I called it. And then so I wrote it up. I submitted it to Voc Rehab. If they approved my wages and my hours, I charged hourly rate of $50 an hour. I charged transportation rate of $30 an hour. And that was because I would go, if I left the city of Indianapolis and say, I went over to Terre Haute, Indiana. I would drive, my driver, I should say, would drive me over to Terre Haute. And if it took 2 hours there, I would charge $30 an hour. That's 60, 2 hours back. That's 120. And then I would pay my driver $10 an hour. So that's 4 hours. They got 40, I got the rest. And so that's how we did it. And that's how I originally did it. And so, um,
And
uh,
Ron, one other
mhm,
question. Does your
mhm.
state require that you have your own liability insurance?
I'm sorry. Say it again. It was talking in my ear.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Does your state require that you have your own liability insurance?
Yes, it does. And so when I started the conversation, how I told you guys I was already in business. So I had business liability insurance with State Farm. So what I ended up doing was calling my agent and I said, I need some business liability insurance, but my product is people. And he thought about it for a while and he said, okay, fine. They gave me $1 million coverage for my students. And so that's how I got business liability insurance on my students.
And the last one we have right now is, have you ever contracted with Medicare or Medicaid?
I haven't contracted with Medicare or Medicaid, but I was interested. It's funny you mentioned that because my daughter has a business called Simplified Insurance Solutions, and she's a Medicare Medicaid provider. And so she has been asking me to go to look into contracting with some of her clients that are blind and visually impaired. So I've been looking into it. I haven't really dove into it yet. I did some private pay through a couple people's insurance, and they paid it, but not through Medicare or Medicaid, and not through the waivers either.
Ron, I have a question for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You were talking about the liability insurance, and you mentioned that the coverage they gave you covers your students. Does that also cover you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have said that.
No, no, no. I just
Uh,
wanted to make sure. Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm covered. My students are covered. The equipment that I buy for them is covered. Oh, and then with my contracts, that's how I set my contracts up, by the way. I would charge an hourly rate. I would charge for transportation. I would charge for the equipment that we would buy. So that would be um, canes, sleep shades, things of that nature. I would purchase and they would reimburse me for. And so I set all of that up and I submitted it to Voc Rehab and they either approved or disapproved it. I've never not gotten a contract approved. Yeah.
Great. Thank
So,
you.
so yeah. So, I can tell you guys that it wasn't an easy thing to do. I, I think a question came in.
Yes, it came in.
Okay.
Do you hold general liability, professional liability, or both?
I hold professional liability insurance. My students is my product. I talked to my State Farm agent and they set it up where my the certification I have to get recertified with my insurance company every year. And then they will send my certification over to any agency that I work for to show them that I am insured, bonded, if you will, and that that this is my business and my profession. And so anyone wanting to see that. So for example, I was working with the rehabilitation center here in town called Bosma Rehabilitation Center, Bosma Enterprises. And so they had a summer program where they needed more orientation instructors than they had on staff. And so they asked me would I come over and take a look at the program and probably lend my services to them. So I did, and it was a senior program that they were starting in the summertime. And so I started working with the seniors. Now, here's what I would say to all of you. Now, Bosma had um, their criteria, if you will, for working with students on cane travel. One of the things that they would say to me is that, well, Ron, we would like you to introduce all of the students to the different kinds of canes. Some had roller balls, some had metal tips, some were long straight canes, some were folding canes. It is up to the student what they decide to use. Where we bumped heads at is because as a contractor, to me, and if a person had residual vision and it was a progressive sight loss, I would want them to use sleep shades. And some of the staff, the supervisors over there would say, well, Ron, it's up to them if they use sleep shades. So I said, well, I'm in business for myself. My business is Cain and Abel. They have a right to pick me as their vendor or not. They do not have the right to set my curriculum. And so we had to come to a happy medium on that because of the fact they were interpreting client choice as clients have a right to choose if they want to wear sleep shades, if they don't want to, if they want to have on them or they don't want to, and that kind of thing. And my thing is that if a person chooses me as a vendor, and I know they have a progressive eyesight loss, I'm going to request, and it's just a request, that they use the sleep shades. Because primarily, I don't teach vision. I'm a totally blind instructor. I teach from a cognitive paradigm, and I don't teach vision. And so for me to teach them how to use the vision they already have would be contrary to what I teach, only because they already know how to use that vision that they have. I don't need to teach them that. I want to teach them so that if they have to make the transition from a visual learner to a cognitive learner, they'll be able to do so. And they'll be able to make the transition because they've worked with me under sleep shades, and they don't have to come knocking back on rehabilitation's door saying, okay, I'm blind enough now. I need cane travel.
Ron, we just have a hand. Desmond has his hand up.
Hey, Ron. Great
Sorry.
material. So I guess the question I have is, when you,
Desmond, okay, now I'm sorry. What were you saying? It was really talking.
oh, okay, no worries. Yeah. So when you're, so a lot of times when we work with students in like a center-based environment,
Yes,
they're kind of a captive audience, and they're there, and you know less likely to I guess not be in class and that kind of thing. But
sure.
one thing I've experienced in some of the contract I do is how to get them to have skin in the game. Like I'll have clients 30 minutes before I come to them, they'll hey, oh, I can't work today, and or whatever, and some and things happen.
Sure.
But how do you, if especially if people aren't necessarily paying you directly, if a rehab's paying, how do you, in a situation, contract and get them to have some skin in the game?
Well, for one, when I first work with a student, Desmond, I know for a fact, especially if they're newly blinded, that they're very afraid of this new environment that they're getting ready to embark on. And another thing, I also try to disarm them by telling them, I'm blind. I'm learning this too. So when I come over your house, I know nothing about your neighborhood. I know nothing about your house. But guess what we're going to do? We're going to learn it together. we're going to do what's called structured discovery learning. We're going to get out there and figure out where it is, where the corner drugstore is, or what's in your neighborhood that you're wanting to find. Or if you're trying to find the bus stop in order to go to work, we're going to walk from your neighborhood to the bus stop. We're going to ask the right questions. We're going to solicit the answers, and then we're going to go. And then we're going to do it with confidence. And I show them that I'm confident, and hopefully um, they'll become confident. You see, 90% of what I teach is not how to swing a cane from left to right. 90% of what I teach is attitudinal, changing your own intrinsic beliefs about blindness, about what you're feeling at the time. And I know you're afraid, and that getting them to believe in themselves, because I know for a fact that once you believe in yourself, you become that you believe in. And so I try to disarm them with that. And we have a lot of talks. If they don't feel like walking today, I'm just not sure. I'm not feeling this today. Well, then we'll talk about it. What are you feeling? What are your apprehensions? What are your, whatever. And we talk about it. And then we go. And then some days we may not go that day, but then the next time I come, we're going. So, I mean, I hope that answers. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Sometimes, well, when you're talking about structured discovery learning, you're talking about a paradigm that is experiential learning. We get out there, we do it with the students. We're talking about problem solving abilities. We figure out if we're in the street or if we're not in the street. We talk about the differences of what a street feels like, that the concrete is harder sound with your cane tap than the street sound because it's a softer sound because it's made of tar. We talk about use of non-visual cues, transportation patterns and smell and sense, those kinds of things. And then we talk about role modeling. If I can do it, you don't understand, because yes, I do understand. I live it every day, just like you. And so they can't pull that card on me because I am living it every day. But the other beauty is I don't know any more than they do at the time. What I do know is how to ask the right questions, elicit the answers I need, and we go. And so they learn to do that for themselves. And I don't just give them, I don't just take them out in the middle of a major intersection like that and scare them to death. I start out slow, and I start out, but now one of the cons of contracting is that I don't get to work with them every day. I may have 7 clients in a day, and they're all different. And then I try to get back around to them at least once a week. And sometimes that's not hard enough. But one of the beauties of being a contractor is that I can tell them, you need more than what I can give you now. People say, but you're shooting your own self in the foot by doing that. I say, that's okay, because part of my job is to be an advocate for this person too. So I'm not going to sit here and just try to make money off this client. I say, you need to go to a comprehensive training program. It would benefit you more to have 5 days a week cane travel, the rest of the classes that they're going to teach you, and then they end up going, and I've lost the client. But on the other hand, I've gained an independent blind person, and that goes in the cap of feather of my advocacy hat. So.
Thanks, Ron. I have another one for you.
Sure.
This one says, I am an O&M instructor. I would like to start a business providing O&M services. Do I start by forming an LLC? How do I market myself? And how do I get my first client?
Well, the first thing I would say is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's what I felt about my business. I went out, I set myself up, some contracts. I went and talked to the local vocational. I don't know what state they live in, but whatever state it is, I'm sure they got either commission for the blind there, or they got a vocational rehabilitation services there. you go and you get signed up as a vendor with your state. And then once you get signed up as a vendor with your state, then you start marketing yourself to all of the VR counselors in your state and tell them who you are. Send a cover letter. I'm XXX, and I'm a cane travel instructor, and your credentials. You lay it out, and then you tell them. And attached is my fee sheet, or whatever you want to call it. And you do your cover letter and you submit that to all the counselors in the state. And if they choose to call on you or put you on their vendor list, then you'll start getting calls to be a client, to work with their clients, voc rehab clients. Then what I did is went to the independent living centers, and they had the chapter $2, which were the senior monies. And then they're always looking for, and you guys know this, and that is that most of voc rehab took away the homemaker goals. And so the seniors that were getting O&M under voc rehab cannot get it anymore because they don't have a education goal, nor do they have a employment goal. So they channeled those seniors into the independent living centers. And so you go to the independent living centers and they have those chapter $2 now. And so you go to them and say, if you need someone to teach these seniors cane travel, and you'd be surprised. Some of the seniors, everybody thinks, oh, they're just going to sit at home and watch TV or listen to the radio or whatever. They don't want to do anything. These seniors are up, ready to go, and they just waiting for a new release on life. And so if they want to just, but here's the thing, if they want to go just to their mailbox, walk down to the corner store, that's their independence. That's what they want to be taught. Or you can also, so you get the senior chapter $2. Then you can go to schools, and then you can do like, well, you don't have, if you're sighted, you probably don't have to go through the changes that I had to go through, but the parents are a great resource. The parents are, they have power in the IEP that a lot of people don't realize. And if they say, I want this man to teach my child cane travel in the district, he's willing to do it. Here's his credentials, here's her credentials. And then they give you the opportunity to work with them. You'll be surprised how many doors that open. So right there, you got voc rehab clients, you got senior citizen contracts, and you got school contracts. Then you can work on the third-party contracts if you like. I've had enough work to keep me busy these last 24 years.
And Ron, did you set up an LLC?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you get sued for whatever reason, they only sue the business, they can't sue you personally. So yes, I did.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments, anything?
That's all we have in the chat for the minute.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to throw any others in there?
Yeah, so I know there's probably some contractors over here on this call. Maybe what works for you that I haven't talked about that maybe we should talk about. If anybody has that, jump right in there.
Somebody asked, have you contracted with the VA?
Yes. So I haven't contracted with the VA itself, but I have trained veterans, if that makes any sense, because they came through the VR process, even though they were a veteran. So I've worked with them, but I haven't necessarily contracted with a VA such as like a Hines or the Indianapolis VA hospital. They've all had their own O&M instructors, although I'm not opposed to it.
And Kristen has her hand up.
Kristen, yeah. Oh, am I supposed to lower her hand or do something?
No, I think, there we go.
Oh.
Oh, she just lowered her hand.
Okay.
She'll jump on if she has a question. Anybody
Okay.
else? We got another one. What would be your best advice for someone considering contracting?
I would say do your homework. I would say know that if you want to do contracting, uh, you also have to be a marketer. Um, So I would say that the biggest part of contracting for me is marketing. I had to become my own best advocate. I would talk to different groups about orientation mobility. I would talk to them about going into the field of orientation mobility because we had a shortage of contracts. So then I would also, I would say, once I got to know the players that gave every, yeah. So the contracts that I know that I wanted to get, um, I would generally introduce myself to those who were the players in the field, which were the voc rehab directors of blind services, which were the directors of the independent living centers, which were the school superintendents. And you go out and you talk to the different groups. Say March is a good time to market yourself because it's Disability Awareness Month. So you can go out and talk to some of these different venues, and then you get known. Then you can go to the transition day over at the school for the blinds that we have around the country. Then you can go and talk to the to the different co- yeah. Okay. So then you want to go to the different venues and you want to talk to them, the health fairs and stuff. You want to pass out your business cards, you want to pass out your flyer or your cover letter, and those things will help. Those are some of the biggest things that you have to do. Once I got my word out and that I was and the word got out that I was a pretty good instructor, it started to feed on itself. People started to call on me and asking that I be their vendor of choice. And the rest is basically history. I not only have contracted with the state of Indiana, but I'm a vendor in the state of New York. I'm a vendor in the state of Wisconsin, believe it or not. I'm a vendor in the state of Kentucky. I'm a vendor in the state of New Hampshire. I work with clients in all of those different states. And so I had to sign up to be a vendor with that state in order to get paid. In the case of New York, um, and I'm not sure how they got my name, but the state of New York was having a trial with a young lady that was blind, and they took her children away from her simply because they said, well, you're blind, you can't be able to navigate with these children. She had one, she had to hold its hand, and the other one she wore on her back in a papoose strap. And so she had to navigate in the snow in Rochester, New York, and they didn't think she would be able to do it. So they took her children away and gave them to a sighted person. And so, yes, I do as well. Yeah. So what happened was they didn't want the state of New York did not want the state did not want the state O&M instructors to to give okay, yeah, they didn't want to give the O&M assessment to a O&M instructor in New York. So I don't know how they scoured the country. They gave me the opportunity to come there. Gave me a 2-week assessment on this young lady. And so it'd be me, her baby on her back, and she was holding the other child's hand, and we would all be walking down the street from our home to the bus stop, from the bus stop to the store and back. They paid all expenses, and they gave me, let's see, for a week, they gave me $5,000 with a with all expenses paid, airfare, hotel, etc. So sometimes they can be really lucrative, sometimes not so much.
We've had a few questions come in.
Okay.
Some of them you've covered naturally, Ron, but I'll read them out.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and give your new to the field of independent contracting and O&M self, what words of wisdom would you give? And what have been some of your biggest challenges and biggest successes?
Again, my biggest, I would say if I was to give myself some advice, I would say that I would have learned to be a better marketer because I had to learn by doing, and I didn't know. I was already in business. I knew how to market my products on my shelves and all of that kind of stuff and put up, but I never had an opportunity to market people, market myself by people being my product. And so I had to learn that, and I did. And I guess some of my biggest successes was that I proved the naysayers wrong. The first time I proved them wrong was when they thought I couldn't work with a deaf blind person because I was blind and they were deaf blind. And I ended up working with that deaf blind person, and I charged them $50 an hour, and they gave me 90 hours after I worked with them at that time. So that was for my first student. The other uh, thing that you said, big successes and not so. So the other, I would say the biggest um, liability probably was um, drivers. Oh my God. At that time, we did not have Uber and Lyft. And so contracting and keeping good drivers was a pain. And so I would have to always make sure I got a driver. So what I ended up doing is I had a driver that drove me in town to my different venues. And then I had a out of town driver. And then I had a driver that was on standby that if one of the others couldn't drive, they would. So I try to balance it out where I wouldn't wear out my drivers. That was a challenge.
Mm.
Um, but I wouldn't do it all. I would not have done it because I feel like it's been the most rewarding experience I've had in my life simply because I love working with people. Again, it's not about swinging of the cane. It's about seeing people go from sitting in front of their television thinking that life is over because they're blind to, man, I'm about to get out here and get me another job, and I'm about to go to the basketball game with my friends again, and I'm about to do this, do that, and not be afraid. I had one lady who was just so terrified about leaving her house, and that because she just knew she just lost her sight, she knew she couldn't travel to the end of her driveway. By the time our lessons was over, she was not only traveling to the end of her driveway, she was crossing major lighted intersections. She was doing all this. Then to cap off this story was that she called me after our lessons was over. She said, "Ron, I just want you to know I'm at the airport right now, and for the first time, I'm getting ready to go visit my sister in California. And I just wanted you to know that I'm going by myself." And I thought, now this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. Any other questions?
Very cool. Yeah. Oh, we've got now they're all flowing now, Ron.
Okay.
Um, I think a few people would love your contact information if they have questions that they come up with later, if you're open to that.
I am. And can you put it in the chat for me once we're done?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
The next question I wish I had thought of because I think it's a good one. Would you mind talking about liability, notes, when to not work with a client, etc.?
Yes. Um, First of all, I make it a habit of not saying that I will not work with a client because everybody has capacity, and what you do with that capacity is left up to you. And everybody has a level of independence that they deem necessary for themselves. So I start from that. And so I never, ever turn down a client for the most part. What I can say is that some clients have just said, I'm just not ready. I will not work with you. And I have to abide by their wishes. Um, but for the most part, deafblind, people using wheelchairs, people on walkers, average blind person who has no other disability other than blindness. I've worked with them all. And again, their level of independence is what they deem necessary for themselves.
And do you do lesson by lesson case notes so you're covered liability wise?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. So, how I do my note taking. So, and this was back in the day when I didn't have an iPhone and I had I had a recorder, was it a Victor Stream or something. Anyway, soon as I got through working with that client, I'd always make a case note right there, just talk it into the recorder on my way home or something. And that way, when I added up all my notes, I would submit those notes to on my reporting form, and I created a reporting form to report to Voc Rehab. I, rec- I, re- I created a form to work with the superintendent of school contracts. I created a form for independent living centers. You know, everybody wanted different things. The schools wanted goals and set some goals for each semester, what we were going to accomplish with the kids. The adult blind voc rehab clients, they wanted me to report. Oh, I mean, you could report every day if you like, or every week, or every month. What I learned about voc rehab clients is this. In the state of Indiana, voc rehab didn't want to pay so quickly. They do a better job now, but they didn't want to pay so quickly. So what I had to do is that I had to bill, and then I learned this saying, bill early and bill often. And so what I did was I learned to send my first batch of bills in. I knew it would probably take a month to get those in, get paid for those, but I would keep billing every week. So when I got paid, and it would be direct deposit, when I got paid from the state, I kept billing, and as I got paid for the first one, the second set of the billing would come due, and they would start paying me, and so on and so forth. So I just kept a running billing cycle, and so therefore it kept money coming in. Now some people can't do that, and they can't just wait on their money, because if this is their only job, then I understand that. And that's why I said try to do it that way, and you'll always keep money coming in. With me, I didn't do it that way at first, simply because I had another business. And so that was taking care of my needs. But somebody who's just going to do contracting only, I would say that first way: bill early, bill often, and bill for everything. You bill for travel, you bill for training time, you bill for the equipment that you're buying them, and you bill for you sitting down doing your reports and all of that. So there you go.
So you doing reports, that counts as your hour rate?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you was
I'm
talking.
sorry. You sitting down and doing your reports, you include that in your hourly?
Yes.
Do you bill that as if you were with a student?
I build that as a part of the student's
Right.
lesson. Yes, thank you.
There were a couple of questions, but I think you answered it about other states. If you have to travel to another state, they pay airfare, hotel, and expenses.
Yes.
Yes. Somebody else asked for
The
your
next,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
For your contracts in other states, do you hire other instructors to help you with that?
No, because I don't, well, I may know some other instructors in that state, but the contract is with me.
Mhm.
Now, when I started to bring people into my business, then I did that. But when I was sole trainer, then no, I wouldn't bring another instructor in on the contract.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you, the next question is, do you meet with them over the phone beforehand? Joanne says, I was doing itinerant work through the state, and sometimes as a woman, I felt uncomfortable showing up to a house in the middle of nowhere by myself and never knew what I was getting into. How do you deal with showing up to unknown situations?
Good question, Joanne. So most of the time I talk to the students and the clients over the phone. That is true. Once I get to the once I get to know the parent or the student or the client, if you will, then we set up a time to meet, and then I go by their home. The first visit is just a conversation. We're filling out paperwork, things of that nature, and we're talking. If they don't have a cane, I'm ordering them a cane. When their cane comes in, then we proceed to work. I'm reminded of a time that I was working with a student, and it was a little Caucasian student. Now I'm an African American male, and I had to go to this town that's in Indiana that I didn't, think anything about it, but I went up there and I started working with her in her neighborhood. And of course, a few minutes later, um, these cars pulled up, and the guy said, "You, what are you doing?" And I said, "Me?" And he said, "Yes, you, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm working with my student. Let me see your ID." And so I reached in my wallet and pulled out my ID. And he said, "Well, I'm an officer. And we got a call that a black man was following a little white girl, and we had to investigate it." So I thought about it, and I said to myself, well, okay, that's fine. You know, it happens. Uh, you know, you know, Dr. Jernigan used to say the more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, sometimes that happens. And so I let that go. A couple of weeks later, not only did one car pull up, but four squad cars pulled up and surrounded me. Same little girl. "You, what are you doing?" I said, "Wait a minute now. I'm an officer of the law." And I said, "Don't you see my cane?" "Well, yeah, and don't you see her cane?" "I am her instructor. I am being paid by the state by the school," and I told the school district that she went to, "and to work with her in her neighborhood." She wasn't out of her neighborhood. She was down the street from where she lived. And well, we got a call that a black man was following a white girl. And I said, "You know what? The first time you guys um, pulled me over and stopped me because I'm, you know, instead of driving while black, instead of what I was just walking while black, you guys pulled me over and said, 'What am I doing?' I gave you the answer. This time you're pulling me over and you got four other squad cars with you." I said, "The next time this happened, I'm going to the police commissioner or the chief of police of this city, and I'm going to raise holy hell because you guys are giving me an impediment to my employment, and you guys are stopping me from doing a job that the state of Indiana is paying me to do. And then I'm going to call my organization and I'm going to bring about 50,000 blind people down here to march around this damn police station. Now, how do you like that? After I call the media. And so they stopped doing it. But the reason why I tell you this story is because those things may not happen to everybody, but and that was one thing that I didn't think would happen to me, but it happens. And you have to learn how to deal with it. And you have to, be your own best advocate, because you can't allow people to stop you from doing a job that you're being paid to do. And just because I'm a different skin color than someone else, that means I can't teach in this city. It's something wrong with that picture. So there you go.
Thank you. The last question we have at the moment is, what is the average hours per week you work? Direct service hours versus billing hours?
Well, let's see. Direct service. So right now I have I had 7. I have 5 clients now. So I generally, here's what I work. I work 2 hours with adults. And I work 1 hour with a child. So, and I got, let's see, I got 40 hours. Ooh, I have to add that up. I got 40 hours with one student. I got, let's see, 25 hours with another. I'd have to add it up, but probably overall, I would say 75 to 80 hours, maybe a week. And again, I'm only doing it part-time, guys, because I have another business. So I have to be at that business. And then what I do is leave that business and I generally work in the afternoons. Now, if I have to go out of town, I take the whole day off. And what I try to do is, say I got a student in Terre Haute, Indiana. If I go up to Terre Haute and I know it takes me 2 hours to get there, what I'm gonna do is see if I can get other clients in that area. So that way I can cover all of them at the time I'm up there. And and maybe I do, and maybe I don't, but sometimes it works like that.
Kind of along that point, Ron, somebody just asked, do you ever do group training? So the private contracting, have you ever taught in a group setting with multiple clients at once?
The most I've had was 2 at one time. Now, here's what I have done though, and this is pro bono, which I do some of that too, is that I will go to a federation event and I will offer my services up to those who may need to learn to get around the hotel that we're in. Or so I may take 4 or 5 students at a time, and we just traipse up and down the halls and figure out where we're at, and figure out how to get to the front desk, and figure out how to get to their rooms and things like that.
Okay. Do you use sleep shades with all of your clients? Does that impact your caseload?
Most of the time I use sleep shades. Sometimes they'll resist the shades. When they resist the shades, we generally have a talking session, because I want them to understand that, and I talked about this earlier, that if you have a progressive eye disease and you're losing your sight, I don't want to teach you again how to navigate as a partially sighted person. You already know how to use the remaining sight you have. I want to teach you as a totally blind person. So in case that your vision happens to leave, you can make the transition, and you'll know that just because I lost my sight don't mean I still lost my ability to go from point A to point B safely and competently. And that's what I try to bestow on the students. So for the most part, no, I don't not teach without sleep shades, but on occasion, I've had people that resist so much that I tell them, then you probably need to find a different contractor.
Do you, uh, there is another question that just came in, but you have my interest piqued. So I'm going to ask my own question. Do you, so is your caseload primarily people with progressive vision loss? Do you ever work with people who it's not progressive, it is what it is?
Um, yes. And in that case, then what I tell them is you can use your sight for the things you can see, and you can use the alternative skills of blindness training that I'm going to teach you for the things you cannot see. So they can work hand in hand with each other. You can use your sight for the things you can see, and you can use the alternative skills of blindness training for the things you cannot see. And it's nothing wrong with doing that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Somebody asked, do you carry your own health insurance?
Yes, but again, it's through my business. I'm sorry, my other business. I'm sorry. Yeah, through my other business. I don't know if they were on here, but I have a BP operation. I have a store and a bunch of vending machines, and I've been in the vending business now over 40 years. Yeah, I use a I've been in that business for 40 some years, and I've been teaching cane travel 24. Yeah.
You do it all, sir.
I'm,
Um,
I'm getting tired.
um, so the next question is, do you use a specific type of cane? How do you maintain a supply? And then I had a question earlier that goes with this. When you order your canes, do you have them delivered to your residence or do you have it sent directly to the student?
Both. I've done both. I've had them delivered directly to me, and I take the cane to them. And then some of them want the cane to come to them, and I give them their preference. And so that's how I order them. Now, the types of cane, well, that's a different story. I teach with the long white straight cane, the National Federation of the Blind cane, the D canes. I teach with those only because one, they're flexible, two, they're lightweight, three, they have a metal tip on them, and four, the grip on them is so fantastic that if you're walking long distance, you don't have to worry about your arm getting tired or anything. If you're carrying a bag or whatever, 9 times out of 10, you can make it to where you need to go without being too burdened down with the cane. Cane is very lightweight. It bends, it generally does not break. I use the metal tip to give me better echolocation. And I tell my students the reason why we're going to use this cane. I show them the tip. I show them the cane tip. I show them the rigidness of the cane. And I also measure my canes between their chin and their nose. And sometimes I even go up to the forehead. And people say, Ron, why do you use those long canes? And I say, because it gives you more reaction time to stop. I am 6'2.5", guys. And when I'm walking down the street, I take long steps. And if I had a short cane that hit me at my breastbone, soon as it fell off the curve, what's going to happen is I'm coming off right behind it. So I need reaction time to stop. When my cane falls off a curve, it's telling me, and I tell my students, you can't talk to y'all, you gotta do is listen to it. It's telling me, Ron, I have dropped off the curve. You need to stop. If I don't listen to my cane, guess what? I'm coming off the curve with it. But once I got that much time to stop, so therefore I use the long cane and I explain this to my students. I say, now you can use the little short cane that you have and it's hitting you at your waist and you are 5'10" or 6 feet, or you can use the breastbones. We used to call them the sternum sticks. hit you at the breastbone. You can use those, and once you learn, or you, I had one guy in particular. This guy was 6'3.5", and I asked him. I said, "How tall are you?" He said, "Oh, about 5'10". I said, "No, you're not." He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "I'm 6'2", and you're taller. You're a half inch taller than me. How are you 5'10"? What he had been using is a short cane that he always had to walk hunched over. So he thought he was shorter than, I mean, yeah, shorter than what he was. And I'm like, straighten up, keep your head high and that cane tip low, and let's go.
And do you order as needed or do you keep a supply?
I order as I need them, but I do have some because I use a lot of cane. So I do have some. And so I do have different ones, and it just depends. I try to give them all the information they need so they can make an informed choice about the cane, because ultimately it's going to be them. People say, "Well, Ron, you can't keep them safe." It is not my response when I when I'm teaching. I let them know we're going to teach. I'm going to teach you the best techniques that I can teach you. Then it's left up to you to keep yourself safe, because nobody's going to be with you 24/7. And so we're not going to go in unsafe situations until I feel comfortable that you can travel independently and by yourself. And then you keep yourself safe, because ultimately that's who you're going to be with. And it's all about attitude. It's all about believing in yourself and believing in blind people. And that's what I teach. Any more
Kristen said
questions?
she wants the saying head high, cane low, let's go. She wants to make that into a t-shirt.
Okay, Christian. That's fine. My motto on my card is that I can enable orientation mobility services. Give a person your arm and they'll lead you around the block. Give a person a cane, it'll take you around the world.
Love it. Does anybody have, oh, here they come. What do you do while waiting for canes to come in?
I'll take them one of mine. And it may not be the right height, but I try to get them as quick as I can. And I'll use what I need to use. If I got I'm 6'2.5". My canes are generally 65 inches, 67. So what I do, take them one of mine, say, "Look here, we're gonna practice with this. This is not what you're gonna be using, but we got to get started while we're waiting on these canes." And so that's why I try to get more of different sizes. And my wife could tell you I have all kinds of canes. And I have canes from the olden days that pull out, that screw together, that are heavy. I have the canes with the balls. I just got canes. And so, I find one that we can use, whether it be a folding one or not, and we use it and we go. Because I'm not going to not get them started based on we don't have a cane. And we're going to use a cane. May not be the right one for them at the time, but we're going to use a cane till the right one comes in. And that's what we do.
Okay, we have a few more. What is your going rate now? You said $50 when you started.
I'm up to $90 an hour.
And do you use Uber or Lyft with clients?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, so I was telling you about drivers. Uber and Lyft came along. That was a godsend to me, because what I do now is if I don't have I don't use Uber out of town. I don't use drivers out of town. But what I do, I mean, you use Uber or Lyft out of town, but what I do is use it in town. So if I go to a client in town and I don't have transportation, my driver's sick that day or what have you, I would use a Lyft or a Uber. It'd take me to their neighborhood. Same principles apply. I get out, go to their door, and said, okay, we talking, and we were originally agreed to go down to the corner drugstore or something like that. So we go. And technology has changed a lot. And so there's different apps that you can use, CNAI, you can use IRA, all of those things. Now, I don't encourage my students to use those apps when we're training. I may use them when I get into a neighborhood and walking around before I go up to the client's house and stuff. I may use them looking around and stuff like that, telling me what's around me. Then I get up to their house, I shut it off, put my phone in my pocket. I say, okay, let's go. And then we figure it out. So I have used them. I don't make it a practice of doing it. I don't let them use it while we're training. I want them to depend on themselves. I want them to depend on when to know when to cross a street. I want them to know why you're veering cross driveways toward the street, why your cane is over too far to your left or to your right. And that's the reason why you're veering. Keep your arm straight in the middle of your midline of your body. And we go. People say, how do you monitor your students, Ron? I monitor my students by listening to their cane tap. Traditional O&M used to follow a person, about a block and a half away or a block away. I use, I monitor them. Could be the hand in the middle of the back, could be just walking right behind them, using an air arc, excuse me, using an air arcing technique. And I don't tap mine, but I'm still using my cane. They're tapping theirs. I'm letting them know if your cane is not going past the left side of your body, it's not going past the right side of your body. I'm using all of those monitoring techniques. Talking to a person when we're in the airport, keeping up with them that way while they're using their canes. So there's all kinds of techniques in order to get the job done. So that's what, excuse me, that's what I do.
Okay. What is your transportation rate currently?
Let's see, I believe the state of Indiana is now paying me 30, I'm doing $40 an hour. I don't charge by the, 38 cent a mile and all of that stuff. I charge by the time it takes me to get to point A to point B. So if it's in half an hour and I'm charging $40 for an hour, I may charge 20, something like that.
Do you charge for a no-show or last-minute cancellation?
Yes, not the full price, but yes.
Do you have a set, like it's half, or does that depend on the circumstances?
It really does depend on the circumstances. If you call me and I'm en route on my way there, I'll charge for half. If you call me an hour before, I may charge a quarter of an hour or half an hour or something like that. Yeah.
Daniel, I'm going to read out your question. Maybe I'm not understanding it. Maybe I'm the one I'm being a bit thick. Do you use independent routes when teaching?
Independent, huh?
Do you bill if so?
Do I use independent routes? So sending them on an independent route and then telling them to come back and
okay. Yes,
show.
I was being thick. I get it now.
So they're doing an independent route. If they've gotten to a point where they are ready for an independent route and we're working for that hour, I send them on that route. They go get something that shows me they made it to the place I told them to go to. They bring that back to me. I charge for that. We're still working.
Excellent. we're coming up on time. We have 5 more minutes, but does anybody else have any questions or comments or?
I wanted to give you my contact information too.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. So Ron Brown, Cain and Abel is the name of the business, Orientation Mobility Services. Phone number
Are you spelling Kane like
CANE
the tool? Yes.
and then the and sign and then Able, ABLE.
So Ron Brown, Cain and Abel.
And so my phone number is 317-213-7031. And my email address is ron.brown1556 at yahoo.com. Almost forgot it. ron.brown1556 at yahoo.com. That's my contact.
Okey doke.
I wish I did. I never did it. No,
You
I
do
think
not have a
I
website.
do not. No.
So we've had a couple of others come in last
Okay,
minute. Do you use tactile maps?
you're very welcome. Say it again.
Do
I'm
you,
sorry, Taylor.
that's okay. Do you use tactile maps?
Um, if I could read them myself, I would, but I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. Although I would let a student use it. Now, what I have done is use different diagrams that may be. So, for example, we had a guy here in Indiana that mapped out the bus station and all of downtown. And so I used that because it was tactile, you could feel it, you could know where you had the bus station and the different little buildings on the map, the board, and he had all of this. That was helpful because I'll use that for cardinal directions and knowing which way, to tell a person what was the main streets in Indy, the cross streets, what divided east from west, north from south, those kinds of things. Um, so when I first started, I used that a lot. And it was something else you asked me. Was that it?
It was
Tactile.
yeah, it was tactile maps. We do have one more. What is your advice for sighted instructors as far as collaborating with consumer organizations?
I would say for sighted instructors to collaborate with consumer organizations, that's a very good question. I would say it is most important that you do. And the reason being is because you need to know blindness and you need to know blind people and the capacity of blind people, how we think. Some people may look at it as a job. I look at it as a lifestyle. I just don't belong to the organizations because it's a nice thing to do, but we consider ourselves in the National Federation of the Blind and not for the blind. We're not working for people, we're working with people, and they are not just our clients, but they are our friends and our colleagues. And so if you look at a blind person just as a client, you will never get to know the intrinsic beliefs that this person has. You have to understand blindness, and the best way to do that is through the consumer organizations. I mean, they are the pillars of the blind community. And if you want to know what's going on in the pillars of the blind community, go to the blind and figure it out and find out and see how they're traveling and see what they're doing and see what they're utilizing and see what they're talking about. And one of the reasons that Dr. Riles, when I first started, I told you about her and starting this program. One of the reasons why she did was because she wanted us, she knew that blind people were teaching blind people cane travel all along. We just weren't getting paid for it. And so we got the degrees to give us the validity in the field, but she also, and those folks also knew that blind people taught blind people all the time. We tell each other our tricks of the trade. We used to walk. Some persons would cover the left. The other person that you're talking to and walking with cover the right. And we called it paired walking. We just walked together, talking, utilizing our skills, projections, listening ahead for what's up ahead, and continuing our conversation with our friends and stuff. And so you get to know that that's how blind people do and utilize their skills and utilize the tools, and so that's the best way to learn is go straight to the horse.
Well, Ron, thank you for bearing with me and my stumbling over our questions. I appreciate your patience with me. And I'm going to hand you back to Megan.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much, Ron, for all of this information. I think that private contracting is something that so many people have an interest in, but we don't always have an opportunity to talk about it and just ask questions about it. So I think this was great. And just thank you for being so transparent with how you got here and your rates and contracts and insurance and everything. So for those of you, I know some of you just joined a touch after I did the opening announcement. So OMSA members can get 1.5 CEs. You do have to complete a brief evaluation, which I will send via email to everyone who attended this live session, and that will probably come out early next week. And so you'll need the opening and closing code. If you're not an OMSA member right now, and if you join within the next 30 days, you can get those CEs. And so the opening code is Indy Thunder, and then the closing half of that is blind baseball.
Hey. Thank you,
Well,
Megan, once again, and thank
you're
you,
welcome.
Desmond. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And I really appreciate everybody listening in. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.